The first time Lyra Vale died, the entire royal court was watching. Rain hammered the shattered windows of the Hall of Teeth, turning the marble floor black with storm water and silver blood, while the nobles of Varkros stood frozen beneath torn banners and candle smoke. Moments earlier, those same nobles had called her Hollowborn, the girl with a dead wolf, the servant of bad omens, the mistake the moon goddess had forgotten to bury. They had dragged her before the throne in moon-steel chains and accused her of poisoning the sacred bond between the Alpha King and his newly marked Luna. They had expected her to kneel. They had expected her to beg. They had expected her to break beneath the gaze of Kael Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Pax, the most feared ruler in the Wolf Kingdoms. But Lyra had not begged. She had only stood there with her wrists bleeding silver beneath the chains, her gray eyes calm, in a way that frightened people more than screaming ever could. Then the shadow wolves came through the windows, and everything changed. One beast lunged for the king's throat. No guard saw it. No noble moved. Even Seraphine, the golden-haired woman wearing Kael's fresh Luna mark, stepped back instead of forward. Only Lyra moved. The girl they had condemned threw herself between the monster and the king, and its claws opened her side from ribs to hip. Silver blood splashed across Kael's black armor. For one suspended heartbeat, the entire hall forgot how to breathe. Lyra collapsed into his arms, as if the moon had cut her strings, and the Alpha King caught her before he understood why his hands were shaking. Her blood did not smell like death. It smelled like winter dawn, white roses under frost, and something ancient enough to make every wolf in the hall lower its head. Kael stared down at her face, at the girl he had allowed them to chain, the girl he had not defended, the girl his dying wolf had whispered mine toward only moments before. Her lips parted. No plea came out, no accusation, only one quiet breath against his wrist. Then her eyes went still. Kael's wolf screamed. It was not a sound anyone heard with ears. It tore through the marrow of every shifter in the hall, a grief so violent that wolves staggered in their human forms and clutched their chests. The Alpha King dropped to his knees with Lyra's body in his arms, while thunder split the sky above the palace. Seraphine whispered his name, but he did not hear her. The court shouted orders, but he did not move. The remaining shadow wolves froze where they stood. Then, from beneath the palace, something answered. The marble floor cracked in a circle around Lyra's blood. Silver light poured through the fractures like moonlight rising from the earth instead of falling from the sky. Ancient symbols burned across the walls, symbols no living priest could read, symbols buried under generations of royal lies. Kael looked up only when every candle in the hall blew out at once. The storm outside turned white. The broken windows filled with radiance. Behind Lyra's lifeless body, towering higher than the throne, higher than the banners, higher than the arrogance of every alpha bloodline in Varkros, a colossal white wolf spirit rose from the silver mist. Its eyes were the same gray as Lyra's. Its fur shimmered with moonfire. Its presence crushed the hall into silence. One by one, every wolf in the royal court fell to their knees. Counselors, soldiers, nobles, priests. Even the shadow wolves lowered their heads, whimpering like punished cubs. Kael could not move. The beast looked at him, and for the first time in his life, the Alpha King felt like prey. A voice filled the hall, feminine and ancient, soft enough to be grief, and powerful enough to break kingdoms. "You marked the false moon," it said, "and let the true one die." Seraphine stumbled backward. "No," she breathed. "No, this is forbidden magic." The white wolf turned its luminous gaze toward her. Seraphine's Luna mark flared black on her throat. The court saw it. Kael saw it. Not silver, not sacred. Black, a stolen mark, a corrupted bond. The truth burned across her skin before she could cover it. Kael's hands tightened around Lyra's body as horror finally pierced through shock. He remembered the marking ceremony 3 nights before, the sacred flames turning black, his wolf clawing weakly inside him, refusing Seraphine, refusing the altar, refusing the bond. He had ignored it. He had told himself, a king did not have the luxury of instinct. Seraphine was powerful, noble, politically necessary. The Southern Pax would only remain loyal if he marked her. The council had demanded it. The kingdom had needed stability. And Lyra had been no one. A silent palace ward with no wolf, no scent, no standing, no value in the eyes of the court. Except, his wolf had known. His dying wolf had known before his pride did. The white wolf lowered its head until its glowing muzzle hovered above Lyra's blood. A queen may die once, it said, but she does not belong to death. Silver light surged upward. Kale shouted, as Lyra's body turned cold as snow in his arms, then weightless, dissolving into moonlit mist between his fingers. He grabbed for her, desperate, but held only blood and rain. The white wolf's form collapsed into a storm of white fire, and with it, Lyra vanished. No one spoke for a long time. Then Kyle rose. Slowly. The king who stood in the ruined hall was not the same one who had sat on the throne that morning. His crown was gone. His armor was soaked in the blood of his true mate. His wolf, once dying, now raged inside him with enough agony to split his bones. He turned toward Seraphine. She looked smaller without the court's certainty behind her. Kale, she whispered, reaching for him. Listen to me. Whatever that creature was, it lied. You know what I sacrificed for this kingdom. You know what my family gave to keep the Southern Pax from rebellion. He took one step toward her. She stopped speaking. Did you know? He asked. His voice was quiet. That made it worse. Seraphine's eyes flicked toward the council. The oldest counselor lowered his gaze. Another looked away. A third took a slow step back. Kael understood then that betrayal rarely entered a kingdom alone. It came dressed as advice, as tradition, as necessity, as a treaty signed in another person's blood. Did you know? He repeated. Seraphine's beauty hardened into desperation. I knew she was dangerous. She was my mate. She was nothing. Seraphine's voice cracked across the hall. A hollow-born ward, with no wolf, no house, no army, no name anyone respected. I was raised for this throne. I studied every law, every alliance, every blood debt. I held the Southern Pax together while your council whispered that your wolf was dying. I did what a queen must do. You stole a bond. I saved a crown. Kael stared at her, as if he had never seen her before. Perhaps he had not. Perhaps he had only seen what the kingdom wanted him to see. A perfect Luna, polished and obedient, strong enough to stand beside him but not strong enough to challenge him. Lyra had challenged him without raising her voice. That was why he had looked away. Not because she was weak, because some part of him had known that if he truly saw her, everything he had built on duty and denial would collapse. The doors of the hall burst open again. A commander in bloodied armor stumbled inside. Your Majesty, the eastern wall is lost. More shadow wolves are coming from the old forest. The old forest. The place where the White Queen was said to have died. The place no royal patrol had entered in centuries. Kael looked down at the silver blood still staining his hands. Then that is where she went. Seraphine went pale. You cannot leave now. The capital is under attack. Kael turned toward his guards. Seal the palace. Evacuate the children and wounded into the inner crypts. Any counselor who attempts to flee before the servants will be treated as a traitor. His gaze moved back to Seraphine. And arrest the false Luna. The court gasped. Seraphine's face twisted. You would humiliate me before them? Kael's eyes burned gold. You humiliated my mate before them. Be grateful I still believe in trials. He did not wait for her answer. By the time the moon rose behind the storm clouds, Alpha King Kael Draven was riding into the old forest with 12 royal wolves, a dying beast inside his chest, and the blood of the woman he had failed, still drying beneath his nails. The forest seemed to know he was coming. Ancient trees bent inward above the path, their black branches tangled like claws. White fog crawled low over the ground. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled in tones older than any living pack song. Kyle had entered battlefields without fear. He had torn rival alphas apart beneath red moons. He had faced assassins, rebellions, famine, and plague. But each step into that forest tightened something around his throat. Not fear of death, fear that he would find Lyra alive, and she would look at him with the same calm disappointment she had worn in chains. Fear that he would find her dead, and deserve it. Fear that the mate bond, now awakened too late, would lead him only to a grave. His wolf pressed against his ribs, weak but frantic. Finhea. For years the beast had been fading. Kale had hidden it from the court, from his commanders, even from himself. A king whose wolf was dying was no king at all. The council had insisted Seraphine's bloodline could stabilize him. The old priests had agreed too quickly. Kale had let politics drown instinct. But now, with every breath, he felt the truth. His wolf had not been dying from illness. It had been starving. Starving for the bond he had denied. Starving for Lyra. A royal scout ahead suddenly whimpered and shifted back into human form, collapsing to one knee. "Your Majesty," he said, trembling. "Something is watching us." Kyle looked into the fog. 2 gray eyes opened between the trees. Then another pair. Then 20. White wolves emerged silently from the forest. Not living wolves, spirits. Their bodies were made of moonlight and mist, their paws leaving frost over dead leaves. The royal guard stepped back, but Kale raised one hand. The spirits did not attack. They parted. A path opened. At its end stood a ruined temple swallowed by roots and snow-white roses blooming out of season. The temple stones were carved with the same symbols that had burned in the throne hall. Kyle dismounted and walked alone. No one stopped him. No one dared. Inside the temple, he found Lyra. She lay upon a slab of white stone beneath a broken ceiling open to the night sky. Moonlight covered her like a burial veil. Her wounds were gone. Her skin held the stillness of sleep, not death. Silver veins of light pulsed faintly beneath her collarbone, gathering around a mark Kale had never seen before. A crescent crown burned over her heart. Kale stopped at the foot of the slab. For a moment, all his power abandoned him. "Lyra," he whispered. Her eyes opened. The wolf inside him bowed. Not knelt. Bowed. Lyra sat up slowly. Her hair, once dark and tangled from rain, now carried strands of white that glowed beneath the moon. Her gray eyes were brighter, colder, deeper, as though death had taken her to the edge of some ancient sea and brought her back carrying its silence. She looked at Kyle, without fear, without longing, without the fragile thread of hope he had not realized she once held. The bond between them should have burned. It did not. Kyle felt the absence like a blade. "Your Majesty," she said. "Not Kyle. Not mate. Your Majesty." His jaw tightened. "You died. Yes. I felt it. I know. I came for you." Her gaze moved to the silver blood still on his hand. Too late. The words were not cruel. That made them unbearable. Kyle took one step closer, then stopped when the spirit wolves growled softly around the temple walls. He had commanded armies, but these creatures did not answer to crowns. They answered to her. "Lyra," he said carefully. "I did not know." "No," she replied. "You did not look." The accusation struck deeper than rage would have. Because it was true. He had noticed her in the palace before the trial. He remembered now, in fragments that shamed him. A quiet girl, tending injured stable wolves, when royal healers refused to touch them. A gray-eyed ward standing outside feast halls, giving her bread to servant children. A girl crossing the courtyard beneath snowfall while every wolf turned its head toward her and no one understood why. He had seen the signs. He had chosen not to understand them. "I marked Seraphine because the kingdom was splintering," he said. "You marked her because she was useful." "Yes, and I was not." Kale had no answer. Lyra slid from the stone slab. The moment her bare feet touched the temple floor, white roses bloomed through cracks in the stone. Kael's wolf shuddered. He saw her power now, not as a weapon, not as a spectacle, but as something woven into the world's oldest breath. She had not become powerful. She had been hidden from those too blind to recognize power without a crown. "What are you?" he asked. Lyra looked past him toward the broken roof, where the moon watched through clouds, the last daughter of the White Queen's bloodline, the vessel of her wolf spirit, the air your ancestors buried beneath lies because they feared a queen no alpha could command. Kael's throat tightened. "And my mate." At that, something flickered across her face. "Bine. Not softness. Not love. Bine. The bond died with me," she said. "No. Yes." Her voice remained quiet, but the temple itself seemed to listen. "A true mate bond is not a chain. It is an offering. You refused it before it was spoken. You let another woman wear its place. You watched them bind me in moonsteel. You did not choose me while I lived, Kael Draven. Death released me from waiting. For the first time since childhood, the Alpha King did not know how to command the world back into shape. What must I do?" he asked. Lyra studied him for a long moment. "Why ask me? You already have a Luna. She is a fraud. She is what you crowned." His eyes flashed with grief and anger. "I was deceived." "So was I," Lyra said. "For my entire life. Yet no one called that a tragedy until it hurt a king." The words silenced him. Outside the temple, the forest began to howl. Shadow wolves, closer now, more than before. Lyra turned her head toward the sound, and the spirit wolves around her tensed. Kael stepped forward instinctively. "Come back to the capital. Whatever you feel toward me, the kingdom is under attack. Seraphine's allies may have opened the eastern gate. The old forest is waking. If the shadow packs breach the inner city, I know." "How?" Lyra lifted one hand. Silver light flickered between her fingers, then formed the image of Varkros. Towers burning, gates broken, wolves fighting in the rain. In the highest tower, Seraphine stood before a cracked mirror of black glass, speaking to someone on the other side. Kael's blood went cold. "Rival Alpha," Lyra said. "Erend Voss. He promised Seraphine a throne if she weakened yours first." Kael knew the name. A southern warlord with old claims to the crown. A man too patient to attack without rot already planted inside the walls. "Then, we return," Kael said. Lyra looked at him. "We?" The single word cut. Kael lowered his head. "Not as a king, as a man. I have no right to ask anything of you," he said. "But my people will die tonight. Children, servants, wolves who never chained you. If you can save them, I am asking, not commanding." Lyra's expression shifted. There it was, the part of her that had thrown herself in front of claws meant for him. The part Seraphine had mistaken for weakness, compassion, not softness, not obedience. A kind of courage more dangerous than pride. "I will save the innocent," she said. "Not your throne." Kael looked up. "Then, I will make sure the throne is worthy of surviving." For the first time, Lyra seemed uncertain. Then the temple doors exploded inward. Shadow wolves poured through the ruin. Kael shifted before the first reached her. His black wolf form crashed into the beasts with a roar that shook snow from the broken pillars. He fought like a king built for war, all dark fur, golden eyes, and lethal grace. But his wolf was not whole. Lyra saw it instantly. Beneath his strength, something inside him flickered weakly, like a flame deprived of air. Each strike cost him. Each wound healed slower than it should. His power had been bleeding for years. One shadow wolf broke through and lunged for Lyra. She raised her hand. The beast froze midair. Not from force, from recognition. Its black corruption peeled away in strips of smoke, revealing a thin gray wolf spirit trapped beneath. The creature collapsed at her feet, whimpering. Lyra knelt and touched its head. Rest. The spirit dissolved into silver dust. Kael saw it between strikes. His wolf trembled. Queen. The word rolled through the forest. Not from him alone. From every wolf spirit watching. Lyra stood, as moonlight gathered around her shoulders. She did not transform fully. Not yet. Her power came in glimpses. White fire along her veins, frost blooming beneath her feet, spirit wolves answering the movement of her hands. She fought not like a warrior, but like someone undoing a curse, thread by thread. Each shadow wolf she touched remembered what it had been before corruption. Each one bowed, then vanished. When the last beast fell, Kale shifted back to human form. Blood streaked across his chest, breathing hard. Lyra walked toward him. For one dangerous second, he thought she might touch his wounds. She stopped before she did. "You are dying," she said. Kale looked away. "Your wolf," she continued. "It is not injured. It is starving. I know. Because of me? Because of what I did to you." A long silence passed between them. Then Lyra looked toward the capital, where fire stained the horizon red. Seraphine will force the court to crown her before dawn. If she completes the false bond under the black mirror, your wolf will die completely. Kael's mouth hardened. "Then we stop her." "No," Lyra said. "We expose her." They returned to Varkros beneath a storm of moonlit wolves. By then, Seraphine had taken the throne hall. She had freed herself from royal custody, with help from 3 counselors and Commander Rusk, Kael's most trusted war captain. The old hall had been cleared of bodies but not blood. The throne steps were still stained silver. Seraphine stood before the court wearing a white gown over armor, her corrupted Luna mark hidden beneath a jeweled collar. Beside her stood Alpha Erend Voss, taller than most men, with iron-gray hair and a smile sharpened by years of hunger. His soldiers filled the balconies. Royal nobles knelt because they knew how quickly survival could become loyalty. Seraphine addressed them with tears in her eyes. "A flawless performance. The king has abandoned us," she said, voice breaking at precisely the right moment. "He ran into the cursed forest after the creature who brought ruin to our gates. But I remain. I remain because Aluna does not flee when her people bleed." Murmurs of approval moved through the frightened court. Erend watched her with amusement. He did not intend for her to rule long. Only long enough to open the crown laws and hand him legitimacy. Seraphine lifted a silver blade. "By ancient emergency right, I ask the court to recognize me as Sovereign Luna until the king returns or is declared lost." The oldest priest hesitated. Seraphine's eyes sharpened. "Proceed." The priest swallowed and stepped forward. Then the throne hall doors opened. Wind tore through the room, extinguishing half the candles. Kael entered first. Bloodied, crownless, alive. Every royal wolf in the hall stirred. Seraphine's face drained of color. Then Lyra walked in behind him. The court recoiled, as if death itself had returned wearing skin. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, threaded with moon-white streaks. Her torn dress had been replaced by a cloak of pale wolf fur, given by the spirits of the old forest. Her wrists still bore the marks of moonsteel, but they no longer looked like wounds. They looked like silver bracelets burned into flesh by prophecy. Someone whispered, "She died," another answered. "Then why is the king standing behind her?" That was when the court noticed. Kael Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Packs, had entered his own throne hall one step behind the girl they had condemned. Not ahead of her. Behind. Seraphine recovered first. "This is necromancy," she cried. "Look at her. She is not natural. She is a corpse wearing moonlight." Lyra stopped in the center of the hall, exactly where she had died hours before. Silver blood still stained the marble. She looked at Seraphine without hatred. That frightened Seraphine more than rage. "No," Lyra said. "I am what your stolen mark tried to bury." Erend Voss laughed softly. A dramatic claim from a dead servant. Kael's claws lengthened. "Careful." Lyra raised one hand slightly, stopping him. The court saw that too. The king obeyed her. Seraphine's eyes flashed with panic. "You all saw what she did. Wolves died because of her. The sacred flames turned black because of her. The moonsteel melted because of her. The flames turned black, Lyra said, because the bond was false. The hall went still. Seraphine smiled coldly. Prove it. Lyra looked toward the old priest. Bring the moon basin. The priest trembled. My lady, the moon basin has not been used since the White Queen, Lyra finished. A wave of fear moved through the nobles. Kale watched silently, his heart pounding. He could fight armies for her, tear traitors apart, burn the council to ash if she asked it. But this was her battlefield, not his. For once, he understood that protection did not always mean standing in front of someone. Sometimes it meant stepping aside so the world could finally see them. The moon basin was carried in by 4 priests, its silver surface blackened from centuries of disuse. It was set between Lyra and Seraphine. Ancient law said the basin reflected not a face, but the truth of a bond. Seraphine's composure cracked. This is unnecessary. Lyra extended her wounded wrist over the basin. A single drop of silver blood fell into the water. The basin ignited, not with flame, with memory. Images rose above the water for all to see. Seraphine in the old moon temple weeks before the marking ceremony, kneeling before a black mirror, Commander Rusk handing her a vial of royal blood stolen from Kael's chambers, a counselor burning old records bearing Lyra's name, a priestess whispering that the Hollowborn girl must never touch the moon altar, Seraphine carving a false Luna mark into her own throat with forbidden magic, then covering it with powdered silver before the ceremony. The court erupted. Seraphine screamed and struck the basin, but the images only grew brighter. Then came the final memory. Lyra, as a child, not in a village, but in the palace nursery. A baby wrapped in white fur, a woman with silver hair kissing her forehead while soldiers pounded on the door. The woman whispered, "Hide her, wolf, or they will kill her for being queen." Then she pressed her hand over the baby's heart, and a white light vanished beneath Lyra's skin. The hall fell silent. Lyra stared at the image. For the first time, her composure broke. "My mother," she whispered. The old priest dropped to his knees. White Queen's blood. Then another wolf knelt. Then another. Across the hall, royal wolves bowed their heads one by one. Not because Lyra commanded them, because something older than command moved through their bones. Seraphine backed away. No, she is cursed. She is dangerous. She will take everything. Erend Voss smiled thinly and drew his sword. That is precisely why she should die before she learns how. He lunged. Kael moved. But Lyra was faster. Not with a blade, with truth. The crescent crown mark over her heart blazed through her cloak. Moonfire erupted across the floor in a perfect circle, trapping Erend mid-strike. The shadow wolves hidden among his soldiers screamed as the corruption inside them burned white. Erend staggered, his own skin splitting with black veins. The court saw then what he had brought into their kingdom, not allies. A plague. You wanted a weak throne, Lyra said, voice no longer soft. So you helped poison a king, crown a false Luna, and turn wolves into monsters. Erend snarled, shifting halfway into a monstrous gray wolf form. And what are you, little ghost? A dead girl with borrowed moonlight? The hall shook. Behind Lyra, the white wolf spirit rose again. This time, it did not tower behind her as something separate. It stepped into her. Moonlight consumed her body. Her bones shifted. Fur burst like white fire along her skin. The court cried out as Lyra transformed, not into an ordinary wolf, but into a massive white queen wolf with silver eyes and a crescent blaze across her chest. Every window shattered outward. Every shadow wolf dropped flat to the floor. Even Kael's black wolf, surging beneath his skin, lowered its head in awe. Erend attacked. Lyra met him in the center of the throne hall. The battle was brief and terrible. Erend fought with brutal strength, but his power was stolen, stitched together from corruption and ambition. Lyra fought with the old moon behind her. She did not tear him apart in rage. She broke the spell inside him. White fire pierced his shadowed chest, and the stolen wolf spirits trapped within him burst free in a storm of silver howls. Erend collapsed in human form, empty-eyed, powerless, no longer an alpha, but a man crushed beneath the truth of what he had become. Commander Rusk dropped his sword. The corrupt counselors tried to run. Kyle's guards seized them before they reached the doors. Seraphine stood alone beside the throne, shaking. Her beautiful mask was gone. Beneath it remained fear, grief, and a hunger so old it almost looked like sorrow. "You think I wanted this?" she whispered, staring at Lyra as the white wolf shifted back into human form. "Do you know what happens to noble daughters who are raised for power and fail to secure it? My father would have married me to Erend. My house would have been slaughtered. I had one path to survive." Lyra stepped toward her. "So you chose to bury me beneath it." Seraphine's eyes filled with tears she no longer controlled. "You were already buried. Everyone believed it. I only used what the kingdom had already decided you were." That truth landed heavily, because it was not only Seraphine who had condemned Lyra. It was the court, the priests, the council, the king. A whole kingdom had found comfort in believing one girl was empty. Kale walked forward then. His face was pale, his wounds still open, his wolf barely holding inside him. He stopped before Lyra, not Seraphine. The hall waited. The old world waited with it. Kyle removed the broken remains of his royal signet from his hand and placed it on the blood-stained floor between them. Then he knelt. Gasps rippled through the hall. The Alpha King knelt before the Hollowborn girl, before the dead wolf, before the queen he had failed. "I cannot undo what I did," he said, his voice carrying through the ruined court. "I cannot command forgiveness. I cannot claim a bond I broke by cowardice and pride. Before this court, before every pack, before the moon that witnessed your death, I renounce the false mark. I renounce any law that named you lesser. And if my throne must kneel to recognize its true queen, then let it kneel." One by one, the royal guards knelt behind him. Then the servants. Then the wolves. Then, slowly, the nobles who had sneered at Lyra that morning lowered themselves to the marble floor. Lyra stood above them, silver blood dried on her wrists, moonlight in her hair, grief and power held together in one trembling breath. This was the reversal the court feared. But Lyra did not smile. She did not gloat. She looked at the kneeling kingdom and saw not victory, but the terrible cost of being believed only after dying. Her gaze returned to Kale. "Rise." He did not. "Please," he said quietly. That single word broke something in the room. Not because kings never said please, because this king had never sounded like a man asking for nothing but the chance to become worthy. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "The bond is gone. I know. I am not yours because your wolf wants me. I know. I will not be chosen after being discarded." Kale's throat moved. "Then choose nothing tonight. Choose only yourself. I will accept whatever remains." Seraphine laughed bitterly from where guards held her. How noble, how touching. And when his wolf dies, when the packs fracture, when the southern armies come, will your dignity protect the kingdom then? Kale flinched. Lyra saw it. The dying wolf. The final secret. His power was failing even now. The false mark had poisoned him. Rejecting the true bond had starved his wolf. If nothing changed, Varkros would lose its king before dawn. The old priest stepped forward cautiously. "My lady, there is one right." Kyle's eyes sharpened. "No?" The priest trembled. "The White Queen may restore a broken alpha wolf through blood recognition, but only if she willingly offers moonfire through the heart bond." "No." Kyle repeated harsher. "She owes me nothing." Lyra looked at him. For the first time that night, something softer moved behind her eyes. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. He was refusing salvation because it would cost her. That mattered. What would it do? she asked. The priest lowered his head. It would not restore the mate bond. Only his wolf. The choice of love would remain yours. But the rite is painful. It requires both hearts to remember the wound. Kale stood abruptly. Enough. Lyra stepped closer to him. You do not command me. He froze. A faint, sad smile touched her mouth. Remember? His expression broke. Just for a second. Then he bowed his head. Lyra turned to the basin. Begin. The rite was performed in the ruins of the throne hall, before everyone who had witnessed her humiliation. Kael and Lyra stood facing each other inside a circle of silver blood and moonwater. The priest spoke words older than the crown. Lyra placed her hand over Kael's heart. He shuddered violently as moonfire entered him. Not gentle, not merciful, but honest. It forced him to feel everything the broken bond had carried. Lyra's childhood loneliness. The nights she slept outside palace doors because servants feared her dead wolf. The feast where nobles moved away when she reached for bread. The moment she saw Seraphine wearing the Luna mark and felt something inside her chest go silent. The chains, the trial, the instant she chose to save him anyway. Kyle cried out, not from pain alone, from understanding. His wolf rose inside him, not healed by possession, but by remorse. True remorse, the kind that asks for no reward. Then Lyra felt his memories in return. A boy crowned too young beside his father's corpse. A prince told affection was a weakness enemies could scent. A young king watching his wolf weaken and believing it meant he was unworthy of the throne. Counselors whispering that love had ruined kings before him. Seraphine, offering certainty when instinct offered only fear. Kyle seeing Lyra across palace courtyards and turning away each time because something in him knew she could unmake every lie he depended on. Lyra gasped. For one heartbeat, the dead mate bond flickered between them, not restored, not claimed, only remembered. Then it faded again, leaving both of them breathing hard beneath the watching moon. Kael's wolf surged back to life. The entire hall felt it. A roar of alpha power rolled through the palace, not crushing, not tyrannical, but whole. The black corruption around Seraphine's false mark shattered like glass. She screamed as the stolen symbol burned away from her throat, leaving only bare skin and the ruin of her ambition. Kael opened his eyes. They were gold again, alive. He looked at Lyra, as if she were both salvation and judgment. You saved me, he said. No, she whispered. I gave your wolf back. What you become now is yours to answer for. At dawn, judgment came. Erend Voss was imprisoned beneath the old temple, stripped of alpha power, and left to face the spirits he had corrupted. Commander Rusk and the counselors who conspired with him were removed from office and bound for trial before every pact they had betrayed. Seraphine was brought before the court without jewels, without silk, without the stolen mark that had made her untouchable. Many called for her death. Lyra did not. That shocked them most. She wanted power enough to kill for it. Kyle said quietly beside her. Why spare her? Lyra watched Seraphine standing pale beneath the morning light. Because this kingdom made girls like her believe power was the only way to survive. Death would make her a warning. I would rather make her a witness. Seraphine was sentenced to exile in the moon temple she had corrupted, not as a priestess, not as a noblewoman, but as a servant to the wounded wolves brought from the Shadow War. A living punishment, a daily confrontation with every creature her ambition had harmed. When Seraphine passed Lyra, she stopped. For a moment, hatred trembled on her lips. Then something else came instead. You should have stayed dead, she whispered. Lyra looked at her calmly. Many people thought so. Seraphine's eyes glistened. Then she was led away. The coronation did not happen that day. Lyra refused it. The nobles panicked. The priests pleaded. The Pax needed certainty, they said. The kingdom needed a white queen. The throne needed her. Lyra listened to all of them from the same marble floor, where they had once watched her bleed. Then she said, The kingdom will not be healed by replacing one unquestioned power with another. If Varkros wants a queen, it will first learn to see the people it has buried. So the first decree of the White Wolf heir was not about crowns. It was about the Hollowborn. Every child born without a visible wolf would be protected under royal law. Every ward hidden in servant quarters would be named and educated. Every moonsteel chain used for public humiliation would be melted down and reforged into bells for the temple gates. So the kingdom would hear them every time it tried to forget what cruelty sounded like. And Kael enforced every word, not as a man trying to win her affection, as a king paying a debt. Days passed, then weeks. Winter loosened its grip on the capital. Wolves once sick began to heal. The old forest no longer howled with corruption, but with spirit songs beneath the moon. Lyra moved through the palace differently now, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, not yet as queen. She walked as someone who belonged to herself first, and every room made space for her. Kael did not pursue her with grand declarations. He did worse. He changed. Quietly, painfully, publicly. He dismissed the council that had advised fear over truth. He opened the old archives and restored the White Queen's history to the kingdom record. He trained with wounded soldiers before dawn and sat with orphaned children after dusk. He visited the Moon Temple where Seraphine served and did not look away from what his court had created. He never touched Lyra without asking, never called her mate before others, never claimed that destiny excused failure. And still, his wolf watched her, and still, hers watched him. One evening, beneath the rebuilt windows of the Hall of Teeth, Lyra found Kael alone beside the moon basin. The throne behind him remained empty. He had refused to sit on it since the night she died. "You avoid your throne," she said. Kael turned. "It remembers too much." "So do I. I know." She walked closer. Moonlight softened the harsh lines of his face. He looked less like the untouchable Alpha King now, and more like a man who had been dismantled by truth and was still learning what to build in its place. "The Pax are asking when you will name a Luna," she said. "I will not." Her brows lifted faintly. Kael looked into the basin. "Not unless you ask to stand there. Not unless you choose it freely. And not because my wolf aches for you. Not because the court fears you. Not because prophecy demands it." He turned toward her. "If you never choose me, I will still honor you as queen if that is what you become. If you leave Varkros, I will make the road safe. If you love another..." A growl rippled faintly beneath his voice, and he stopped, jaw tight. Lyra almost smiled. "That one hurt." "Yes," he admitted. "But I would bear it." Silence settled between them. Not empty silence. The kind that grows carefully where shouting used to live. Lyra looked at the moon basin. In its surface, she saw herself as she had been, chained, bleeding, dismissed. Then she saw herself as she was now, alive, marked by moonlight, no longer waiting for anyone to name her worthy. "I loved you before I knew your name," she said quietly. "Kael Venstil." "I hated myself for it," she continued, "because you were the throne that would never look down. The king who passed through halls where I disappeared. The wolf, my dead wolf, answered in dreams. When you marked Seraphine, I thought the pain would kill whatever foolish part of me still hoped." Kael's face tightened with grief. "Lyra, when I died," she said, "that girl died too." He lowered his head. "But I am still here." He looked up slowly. Lyra stepped closer, until only a breath separated them. "I do not know if I can love you the way I did before. I do not know if the bond can return. I do not know if I want it to." Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. "But I know this. When you knelt, you did not ask me to forget. When I saved your wolf, you did not call it forgiveness. And when the court demanded a queen, you did not try to place me beside you like a jewel won from war." Kael barely breathed. "What are you saying?" "I am saying," Lyra whispered, "you may court me." The Alpha King of Varkros looked as if she had handed him the moon. Not possession, not absolution, A chance. Only that. But to a man who had lost her once, it was enough to bring him to his knees again. He did not touch her. He only bowed his head over her hand, waiting. This time, Lyra chose to place her fingers against his cheek. Kael closed his eyes. His wolf trembled beneath the touch. Far beneath the palace, the old white wolf opened its eyes and watched. Months later, when Lyra finally stood before the kingdom beneath a full winter moon, she did not wear seraphine silks or the old crown of obedient Lunas. She wore white armor etched with silver roses and a cloak of wolf fur given freely by the old forest spirits. Kael stood at her side, not ahead of her, not behind her, but beside her. The rebuilt court was filled not only with nobles but servants, wards, healers, soldiers, orphan children, and hollowborn families who had once hidden their daughters from the moon. The old priest lifted the crown. Lyra stopped him. Then she turned to Kael. The hall held its breath. He looked at her with the same fierce restraint he had carried for months. Love held open in his hands but never forced upon her. Lyra reached for him. The moment her fingers touched his, the mate bond returned. Not like chains, like dawn. Silver and gold light spiraled through the hall. Not violent, not desperate, but warm enough to make even the oldest wolves weep. Kael gasped as the bond opened fully, not claiming her, not consuming him, but meeting them both exactly where they stood. Equal, chosen, alive. Lyra looked into his eyes. This time, when his wolf whispered mine, hers answered, not yours. With you. The court knelt. Kael did too. But Lyra pulled him back to his feet before the crown touched her head. No more kneeling for love, she whispered. His smile was small, broken, and utterly hers. Then I will stand with you. The crown was placed upon her head as the first howl rose outside the palace walls. Then another. Then thousands. Across Varkros, wolves lifted their voices to the moon, not for the king alone, not for the queen alone, but for the kingdom that had watched a forgotten girl die and learned, too late, that some souls do not return from death to be chosen. They return to choose. And beneath the storm-cleared sky, with the Alpha King's hand in hers and the white wolf blazing behind her like a second moon, Lyra Vale, once called Hollowborn, once chained as a curse, once buried beneath every cruel certainty of the court, became the White Wolf Queen of Varkros. But far beyond the northern mountains, where the old forest ended and the ashlands began, something heard the coronation howl. Something ancient, something that remembered the first White Queen, and in the dark, it smiled.